try to outline some of my thoughts. When Ben first called me or contacted me via email, one of the things that I responded back to him was that there's a lot of stereotypes that people have of the Christian conservative community when it comes to a topic such as this. And I would point out to you that the Fred Phelps of the world are just as much held in disdain by the conservative community and at large as they are by any other community who the Fred Phelps of the world target with their hate groups. They very much are out of the mainstream, and I would hope that no one here would have the perception that their philosophies that always ends up being in the media is somehow representative of the conservative or the Christian communities, because it is certainly not, although I can understand the misperceptions. Let me start by giving you 3 of 4 points that I think we can all agree on. I believe we all agree that all bullying is wrong. Bullying is unacceptable under any circumstances and should not be allowed to occur or continue, no matter who the subject of the bullying may be or who the bully may be. I believe we can all accept that. I believe we can all agree that education is important and that a free public education is not equitable if the educational environment fails to offer a fair and quality assured opportunity to all students. Bullying disrupts this common goal, and the degree of severity disrupts accordingly. This is the second point that I believe we can agree on. The third point is that I believe we can all agree that the consequences or the punishment for bullying needs to fit the degree of the offense. A group of 15-year-olds, as an example, who are mistreating a 10-year-old should be treated differently than a 7-year-old who's pushing around another 7-year-old, whatever the other circumstances are. The circumstances around the bullying should be taken into consideration when it comes to punishment, although it should all be addressed. The fourth point is where we get into what I perceive are the key differences. I believe that we may disagree in the areas of motivation or why someone may be a bully, how we classify specific acts of bullying, or how to even define bullying. That is a point, or under what circumstances does a particular form of aggressive behavior cross the line from self-assertiveness from an immature child? At what point does that self-assertiveness become bullying, depending on the mental development of that child or that youth? Well, student self-esteem can be very fragile, and the natural outcome of nurturing self-esteem is assertiveness. However, many school students do not always understand the distinction between constructive and destructive assertiveness, and therefore can fall into bullying without even realizing that that's what they're doing, especially at younger ages. Now, these original 3 points, I believe, helps us to frame the public debate as it relates to bullying policies. And I'm assuming that the first 3 points that I've mentioned are truly agreeable to all sides of the debate. So I'm going to now focus on the 4th point and enumerate further on the 3 elements within that 4th point. First and foremost is a disagreement over why bullying occurs in schools. My assertion is bullying is an expression of human nature. It is not necessarily a learned behavior. While it is learned in many situations, any group of immature students will devolve into bullying scenarios without the aid of poor or misguided mentors. It is an expression of human nature. Bullying has been a plague upon human societies for as long as human history has been being recorded. Today it occurs in absolutely every culture and in every region of the world. Bullying in social settings such as schools starts with immature and undisciplined preschoolers and continues throughout college and university campuses. Bullying begins when children want something the other child has, or because they do not want to share what they already have at a young age. This escalates to pecking order behaviors as children learn to reason and compete either consciously or even unconsciously with one another for tangible items that they value, such as toys, classroom supplies, or grades, and also even intangible things such as acceptance or attention. Bullying continues as growing children understand and value their position in a given social setting. This is especially true when it comes to establishing a pecking order within a particular group of individuals. At younger ages, it has often been stated that the meanest people in the world are children relating to one another. I believe that is true. Group dynamics intermixed with individual desires and selfish motivations and ambitions always lead to classical bullying. Bullying is found among older youth and even higher education students far too often, as they still exhibit immaturity and act out motivations to climb or stay in a particular pecking order position. Evidence of this outline of bullying can be found even here tonight in this audience. I have, since Ben contacted me about possibly speaking at this forum, have talked to a variety of people, and I have asked the question of them, what is your experience with bullying? And every person I have asked has admitted that in their childhood or youth, they were either a bully or they had been bullied, without exception. So I'm going to dare say tonight, and hope I'm not wrong, and I'm not going to ask for a show of hands so you can't prove me wrong. Individually, we can discuss this later. But I dare say that at least half of us in this room have been bullied or have been a bully, regardless of any of the enumerated classes that are in contention over this debate. And that is because bullying is an expression of human nature amongst immature and undisciplined individuals. The second point is the sharp point of the debate, and that is how to classify specific acts of bullying. Those who advocate for bullying policies to enumerate specific classes of victims, I believe, overlook the complications of basic social dynamics among developing students. In our contemporary Midwest culture, it takes the average individual around or almost 2 decades or more of mental, emotional, and social development to fully mature. Many disadvantaged individuals take much longer, and our juvenile and criminal courts and correctional institutions are full of witnesses to this fact. Bullying is bullying. A bully will bully whoever is most vulnerable to them. It is much an act of opportunity as it is specific animosity towards classes of individuals within a spectrum of peers. Although I do admit that type of bullying that is a point of discussion tonight does occur, and I do decry it as I do any other bullying. I believe it is impossible to enumerate identified classes of targeted bullying victims without leaving out overlooked victims. Those victims unidentified are just as victimized, yet condemned as their exploitation becomes part of the politically correct targets of opportunistic bullies. For those individuals, the institution that fails to protect them equally is in and of itself part of the bullying. In the effort to classify bullying victims, policy tends to develop around traditional civil rights laws and is then expanded to include current fads or behavior in regard to bullying. I believe this is faulty and that civil rights laws were never developed in the context of developing children or youth social dynamics. Bullying is too broad and it is too complex to simplify in this manner. Bullying must be addressed for what it is, not by who the victim is. Justice in the face of bullying must be fair, and this can only be discerned and applied by focusing on the bully's actions, not the victim. Identified classifications misfocus the bully's actions on the victim. And worse is when victims are not identified because they reside outside the classified protected groups. All circumstances surrounding each and every victim must be evaluated and given appropriate consideration in addressing the bully. Only an all-inclusive anti-bullying policy creates this opportunity and for this appraisal. Thirdly is the failure to agree on what behaviors constitute bullying. And I'm out of time, so I'll try to cover this part a little later.